You are standing at the edge of a Friday that feels bigger than its ordinary hour, and the date in front of you is not just a date, it is a mirror asking what you have been ignoring. Something in you has been sensing movement, but you have not had the words for it, and that uncertainty can sit on the chest like a weight. When the soul knows that a signal is present but cannot yet read it, even the room feels different, as if the air itself is waiting. You may have been waking up with questions that do not leave you, or sitting through the day with a quiet pressure behind your thoughts. The issue is not that you are weak. The issue is that you are listening for direction while surrounded by noise. And if this moment has felt charged without being clear, stay close, because what you are about to hear may help you name the season you are already standing in. If you want a guided way to understand that tension and recognize what your heart is trying to tell you, the call of the chosen. A 30-day journey can help you make sense of the season you are living and the direction it is pressing you toward. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. You do not need to force meaning out of the day. You need to learn how to receive it with steady eyes. Right now, your first task is not to rush, but to notice what has been repeating in your spirit and why it refuses to leave you alone. Maybe this has shown up in small places first. You sit down to work, and your focus breaks before you can begin. You open your phone and feel the pull to check for some sign that would settle everything, but the screen only gives you more motion and less peace. Your shoulders hold tension you did not plan to carry, and your breathing goes shallow in moments when no one else seems to notice anything is wrong. That is how a call often arrives at first, not with fireworks, but with a persistent inner ache that asks for attention. The body starts telling the truth before the mind agrees to it. You may call it restlessness, but it can also be recognition. The problem is that delay can make a signal feel like failure when it is actually invitation. When you keep treating every uneasy moment attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Like confusion, you miss the chance to listen for what is being formed underneath it. What feels heavy may not be punishment at all. It may be the beginning of alignment, and alignment usually asks more of you than comfort does. The deeper question is what this moment is asking you to understand. A season like this is not only about what is happening around you, it is about what is being shaped within you while you live through it. There are times when you are being prepared, times when you are being redirected, and times when something old is simply ending even though your habits have not caught up yet. The danger is assuming that every closed door is rejection, or that every delay is the same kind of delay. Some silences protect you, some pauses train your attention, some interruptions are not detours, but mercy. If you can tell the difference, you will stop wasting energy trying to drag yesterday into a place it cannot live. You will also stop blaming yourself for not having clarity when clarity is something that often unfolds in layers. The wise response is not to squeeze the day for answers, but to let the day reveal what kind of obedience it requires. That is how you begin to move from anxiety into discernment. The scene of this is usually ordinary, which is part of why it is easy to miss. You are making coffee, answering messages, folding clothes, driving through traffic, and all the while, the same inner question keeps returning. Why does this feel so pointed now? Maybe the title on your mind has followed you into the kitchen, into the quiet of the car, into the moments between tasks where your guard is lower. Ordinary life is often the place where sacred direction becomes visible, because there is nowhere to hide from what keeps knocking. If you have been trying to outrun the feeling by staying busy, the feeling does not disappear. It waits inside the busyness, like a note left unread. And the longer you postpone attention, the more your spirit has to speak in fragments. That can make you weary. It can make you impatient with people who seem unaffected. It can make you suspicious of your own sense of timing. But what matters here is not how loud the signal feels. What matters is whether you will answer it with honesty instead of distraction. That is why so many people read The Call of the Chosen, a 30-day journey, when they feel suspended between uncertainty and movement. It gives language to the tension, helps you identify the season without pretending every delay means the same thing, and helps you stop reading every quiet stretch as abandonment. Many readers who arrived feeling confused or tired of waiting said the material helped them understand their season more clearly, organize their prayers, or stop interpreting every silence as abandonment. And that difference matters, because a person who can name the season can respond to it without panic. You stop asking the wrong question and begin asking the faithful one. You begin to see that waiting, closure, rebuilding, and redirection are not identical, even if they all feel slow. When you can distinguish them, you can stand with more peace in the place you are already occupying. That peace does not erase the tension, but it keeps the tension from ruling you. Still, there is opposition in this. The world around you rarely leaves a quiet moment alone. Something is always trying to pull your attention elsewhere, telling you that urgency matters more than discernment. Comparison creeps in and whispers that other people are moving faster, hearing clearer, or living more decisively. Fear presses in with its own false logic and tells you that if you do not act immediately, you will miss what matters. But haste is not the same as direction. A soul can be busy and still be off course. A soul can be active and still be numb. What keeps you from hearing clearly is often not a lack of signs, but a surplus of competing voices. And once you notice that, you begin to understand why the call feels hard to settle. It is not because the signal is absent. It is because the noise is persistent, and the noise is good at sounding important. That is what makes the example of Samuel so close to your life. He heard something calling his name, but at first he did not know how to interpret it. And that is familiar to anyone who has sensed that life is trying to get their attention. You may not be in a temple, yet you may still be lying awake in a room where the silence feels full. You may not hear an audible voice, yet you may still feel a repeated nudge that will not disappear. Samuel's story reminds you that recognition can come before understanding, and that maturity begins when you stop dismissing what you cannot explain. He kept returning to the right place until the message became clear, and that rhythm matters for you too. You do not need to manufacture certainty. You need to remain available when the truth becomes evident. Ordinary obedience is often the path by which a call becomes readable. It is less dramatic than fear imagines, but it is far more sustaining. If you ignore a signal like this long enough, the cost is rarely instant, but it is real. You begin living on autopilot, repeating patterns that keep you busy without making you wiser. You say yes when you mean maybe, and maybe when you mean no. You keep trying to force ease where there should be reflection. Then the body starts carrying what the heart has not addressed. Sleep becomes less restorative. Small decisions feel strangely heavy. Even kindness can feel draining when you are split between what you know and what you are pretending not to know. That is why the call matters now, not because you must rush, but because you must not keep postponing what is asking for a response. Repeated delay hardens attention. It teaches the soul to live half awake. And when that happens, even grace can be missed because it arrives in the form of quiet, not spectacle. Type 888 in the comments as a simple sign that you are choosing to pay attention and not let the signal vanish into the noise. Think of it as a threshold moment, a way of saying that you are ready to notice what has been trying to find you. Then return to the narration and keep listening, because the meaning is still unfolding. What you name with honesty begins to lose its power to haunt you. What you refuse to name keeps circling until you face it. The real conflict, though, is not only outside you, it is also inside the habits of interpretation you have built over time. You may have learned to protect yourself by expecting little, by downplaying what stirs your heart, by calling sensitivity weakness. That pattern can keep you safe from disappointment for a while, but it also keeps you distant from clarity. Sometimes the mind says, "It is nothing," while the spirit keeps leaning toward the door. Sometimes the body feels the strain first, and the mind arrives later with excuses. That delay between feeling and understanding is where confusion grows. You may be asking for a sign while ignoring the way your own life is already speaking to you. The pattern is not shameful, it is human, but it does need to be seen. A person cannot discern a direction clearly while defending the very blindness that made the direction hard to hear. The good news is that once the pattern is named, it starts to loosen its grip. If you are trying to live every day with a heart that stays closed, imagine a seed pressed under dry soil after rain. It is not dead because nothing is visible yet. It is hidden, held, protected, and waiting for the right conditions to begin. That image matters because many of the most significant things in your life spend time unseen before they can be recognized. What looks still may be working in secret. What looks buried may be gathering strength. What looks delayed may be forming deeper roots than you expected. The hidden place is not always a prison. Sometimes it is the chamber where life takes shape without applause. You may not enjoy that part because hiddenness feels vulnerable and lonely, but it is often where the truest preparation happens. And when the surface stays quiet, the temptation is to assume nothing is changing. Yet below the silence, something is being preserved for the right moment. The pressure around that hidden season is real. Soil can be hard, weather can be unpredictable, the weight above can make everything feel slow, but what is covered is not forgotten. It is restrained, not erased. That matters because there are seasons when the call on your life does not immediately become public. And if you judge it too quickly, you may misread the restraint as failure. The delay is not always denial. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is a way of keeping what is forming from being exposed before it is ready. You may wish for speed, but speed is not always kind. Formation often asks for patience that does not look impressive from the outside. In that hidden place, the roots are learning how to hold. They are learning how to keep drawing life when no one is celebrating progress. That is not wasted time. It is the making of steadiness. This is why the moment of turning matters so much. At some point, you stop negotiating with the truth. You stop saying you will pay attention later. You stop pretending that your unease is merely a bad mood or a passing distraction. You realize that the call is not asking for dramatic performance. It is asking for honest response. That shift is quiet, but it changes everything. When you stop negotiating, you start listening differently. You notice what drains you, what steadies you, what keeps returning to your thoughts when the noise drops away. You begin to respect the signal rather than argue with it. That is not weakness. It is maturity. It means you are willing to let direction be more important than image. And once that becomes your posture, the rest of the journey can finally begin to open in a way that is less frantic and more true. Now think of that hidden seed again. It does not become visible by force. It opens because life inside it keeps pressing toward the light. Something in it knows what the surface cannot yet see. The soil was never the point. It was the place where growth was protected until it could be trusted with exposure. Your own life can be like that. What has been resting under pressure may be closer to breaking open than you realize, not in the sensational way fear imagines, but in the steady way life actually works. You may be tempted to judge the process by how quiet it looks, yet quiet can be the sign of deep work. Nothing is wasted in that hidden pressure if it is forming endurance, patience, and clarity. The seed does not need applause. It needs time, moisture, and the right conditions. In the same way, your heart does not need panic. It needs attention. There is also opposition in the soil. Stones resist, dryness resists, and uncertainty resists. A seed does not choose easy ground and then declare itself finished. It persists through what is around it. That persistence is important for you because your call may be unfolding in conditions that do not feel favorable. The wrong question is whether the ground is comfortable. The better question is whether life is still being formed where it is planted. Sometimes the resistance is not there to stop growth, but to strengthen it. The seed learns its direction by pushing through what would otherwise keep it buried. Likewise, the listener learns discernment by staying faithful in the middle of resistance, instead of abandoning the process at the first sign of effort. If this moment feels heavy, that does not mean it is empty. It may mean it is working. And then movement begins, often before anyone else notices. A crack appears, then a thin opening, then a small rise toward air. Nothing about it is flashy. The change is real because it is alive. That is how the call can feel in you too. First a crack in old assumptions, then a clearer sense that you cannot remain the same, then a rising awareness that your next step must be different from your last one. The life inside does not wait for perfect conditions to start moving. It responds to the pressure of purpose. And that response can feel both beautiful and unsettling, because opening always asks for vulnerability. Yet the very thing that feels exposed is also the thing that proves something has been preserved. You are not being made empty. You are being made available. Type "I am ready" in the comments if that image makes sense to your spirit and you are willing to receive what has been forming beneath the surface. Say it plainly, then come back, because readiness is not a performance. It is a posture. Let the phrase be simple and let it be honest. The more honest your agreement, the steadier your next step becomes. What returns now is not the seed image alone, but your own identity in light of it. You are not being asked to become someone else in order to answer the call. You are being asked to live as the person who can carry what has been entrusted to you. That means the goal is not spectacle. The goal is faithfulness. A growing thing does not boast about growing. It simply continues. And the same is true for you when your direction starts to clarify. You will know it not only by intensity, but by steadiness. You will know it by the way your choices begin to align with peace rather than panic. The call becomes less mysterious when it becomes practical, when it starts shaping your daily decisions in ordinary hours. That is where maturity shows up, not in grand declarations, but in dependable obedience. One practice that can help is this. When you wake up, do not rush to interpret the whole day. Sit for a moment and ask what feels heavy, what feels alive, and what feels forced. Let those three questions stay simple. You are not hunting for hidden codes. You are paying attention to what keeps repeating. If a task, a conversation, or a responsibility leaves you drained every single time, notice that. If a certain thought brings pressure but no peace, notice that too. This kind of reflection slows panic and creates room for discernment. It also keeps you from assigning spiritual meaning to every feeling without testing it. Not every discomfort is a command. Not every ease is an answer. Wise attention helps you hear the difference. Another practice is to guard your environment with more care. Not every voice deserves equal weight in your inner life. Some people will intensify confusion because they prefer quick answers to careful ones. Others will help you settle because they know how to honor process. Watch how conversations affect your spirit after they end. If you feel scattered, pressured, or embarrassed, the environment may be too loud for the clarity you need. If you feel grounded, you are probably in the right space to think and pray. Protecting that space is not isolation. It is stewardship. A growing life needs boundaries the way a flame needs shelter from wind. Without them, the smallest gust can scatter what is trying to hold. And yes, there are times when the call asks you to accept limits instead of fighting them. A closed door can spare you from entering before you are ready. A slower pace can keep you from mistaking anxiety for purpose. A boundary can preserve your strength for what actually matters. You do not need to call every limitation rejection. Some limits are merciful. They keep you from exhausting yourself in places that cannot sustain what you are becoming. When you stop treating every pause as a loss, you begin to see how much protection is hidden inside restraint. The call you are hearing is not meant to crush your life. It is meant to shape it with wisdom. At this point, your decision becomes clearer. You cannot keep living as if discernment is optional. The next faithful step may be small, but it must be real. That might mean making one honest apology, finishing one neglected responsibility, setting one needed boundary, or spending one quiet hour away from the noise so you can listen cleanly. Do not underestimate the power of a small, obedient action. It often carries more weight than a dramatic feeling. When you follow what is true in the next step, the rest of the path becomes more visible. That is how trust grows, not all at once, but in movement. The life you are being called into does not usually open to people who only wish. It opens to people who respond. Like a seed that has pushed up through the last dark stretch of soil, there comes a moment when the surface can no longer hold it hidden. Light meets what was covered, air meets what was strained. The opening is not the end of the struggle, it is the beginning of visibility. That matters because visibility brings both relief and responsibility. Once the first leaves appear, the plant cannot pretend it is still buried. It has a new relationship with the world around it. In the same way, when the call becomes clearer, you cannot unsee it. You begin to carry yourself differently because you know something is alive that was not obvious before. The growth is quiet, but it is unmistakable. And even if it is tender, it is enough to show that life has crossed an important threshold. There is a kind of opposition that follows opening. Wind tests what has just risen. Heat pressures what is still young. But even that resistance has a role because it teaches the new growth how to stand. You may be living through that kind of testing now, where the call is clearer but not yet comfortable. Do not assume that because you can see more, everything should feel easy. New clarity often brings new exposure. It asks you to protect what is tender without trying to reverse the growth. That is where patience matters again. The thing that has risen does not need your fear, it needs your care. The more faithfully you tend it, the more securely it can continue. And when the movement becomes visible enough to recognize, you are asked to respond with gratitude rather than performance. You do not need to announce everything the moment you see it. You do not need to make your process a public spectacle. You can simply honor what has opened and continue walking. The call is real enough without being theatrical. It has weight because it is shaping your choices, not because it is dramatic. When you return to your day, return as someone who has seen more clearly. Return to your work, your relationships, your quiet moments, and your private prayers with less confusion than before. That is the kind of return that lasts. It is not flashy, but it is faithful. And faithfulness is what turns recognition into a way of life. Bring it back now to this Friday and this signal. The day is not here to scare you. It is here to wake you. The question is not whether the date itself has magic in it. The question is whether you will let the timing help you pay attention to what has already been stirring. That is the responsible way to hold a meaningful moment. It does not make promises the moment cannot keep. It does not claim certainty where wisdom should remain careful. It simply says that if your heart has been noticing a pattern, you can respond to it with sober trust. That kind of trust does not need to force outcomes. It only needs to answer truthfully when truth arrives. Hold that truth in your hands for a moment and notice how different it feels from panic. Panic demands immediate certainty. Trust allows a process. Panic wants to control the next 10 steps. Trust asks for the next faithful one. Panic makes you treat every silence as danger. Trust lets silence become a place where understanding can mature. When you live this way, you stop wasting energy on dramatic interpretations and begin conserving strength for what actually matters. You become slower to fear and quicker to obey. That change may seem small from the outside, but it changes the whole shape of a life. And so the call that first felt like pressure now becomes a path. You are still you, but you are no longer trying to survive by constant guessing. You are learning how to listen. You are learning how to wait without collapsing. You are learning how to move without forcing. That is why the signal matters. It is teaching your heart how to become steady in motion. It is teaching you that not every delay is a dead end, and not every tension is a threat. Some moments are simply doors into greater clarity. You do not have to break them open. You only have to recognize when they are ready. Like the seed, like the hidden root, like the first green rise through the soil, you are not being erased by the waiting. You are being shaped by it. What looked silent was not empty. What looked slow was not useless. What felt heavy was not without purpose. That is the deeper meaning inside the call, not that you must chase certainty, but that you must remain present while certainty matures. The day may not answer every question, but it can still guide your next step, and that is enough for faith to work with. Take one quiet breath and let that settle. The path ahead does not require theatrical urgency. It requires honest attention, steady prayer, and a willingness to move when peace and truth agree. That is how you keep the signal from becoming another passing feeling. That is how you honor what is real without exaggerating what is not yet clear. You stand, you listen, you choose, and then you continue. If this message is meeting you in a season where you need more than a feeling, read it again with the understanding that many readers return to these pages when they enter a new season. The value is not in collecting another idea. It is in having a companion for reflection, prayer, discernment, and practical decisions when your mind wants to rush. The Call of the Chosen, a 30-day journey, is meant to help you sort what is noise from what is direction, so you can take the next faithful step without panic. To access the ebook, go now to the top of the comments and click the link in the pinned comment. Then, let your attention return to the real work of the day, because clarity is meant to be lived, not merely admired. When you do that, the call stops feeling like a riddle and starts feeling like guidance. Like a plant after rain, you do not need to force what is already alive in you. You only need to keep showing up to the light that has been given. Every small act of trust becomes part of the shape you are taking. Every quiet yes becomes part of your strength. And every time you choose discernment over reaction, you are proving that the signal has reached you. That is enough to begin W. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.